Hi, welcome to this Corbettmaths video. In this video, we're going to look at the video solutions to Corbettmaths Practice Questions on Factorising Quadratics. If you need any extra help on Factorising Quadratics, if you go to Corbettmaths and look at videos 118, 119, 119A and 120, they'll be useful video tutorials for you. But in this video, we're going to go through the video solutions to the practice questions, so let's get started. Okay, now just before I go through question number one, I also want to mention that the first series of questions in this booklet will have factorizations where you've just got an x squared. And whenever we're factorizing these ones, I'm going to be using inspection. So I'm just going to put down the two brackets and figure out what goes in the two brackets by just looking at the quadratic that we need to factorize. When we get to the later questions where they're harder quadratics, perhaps where you've got 2x squared or 3x squared or 4x squared and things like that, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using two different approaches. I'm going to use inspection, and then I'll also look at split in the middle. So I'll use both approaches to those questions. But for the first series of questions where it's just straightforward quadratics such as x squared plus x minus 6, I'm going to use inspection for those ones. Okay, so let's get started. So question number one. Question number one, we've been asked to factorize x squared plus x minus 6. So if we want to factorize something like this, where we've got this quadratic, what we want to do is, well, we're going to have two brackets. So we're going to put down two brackets, and because it's x squared at the front, we're going to put x's at the front of both brackets. So an x there and an x there, because when we expand the brackets, we would do x times x is x squared. Now, to find out what numbers will go here and here, we're going to look at this and say, well, the two numbers that go here and here will multiply together to give us negative 6, and they're going to add together to give us the coefficient of x. The coefficient of x is the number in front of the x. In this case, because it's just plus x, that means plus 1x. So we're looking for two numbers here that will multiply together to give us negative 6, and they will add together to give us 1. Now let's think of two numbers that will multiply together to give us negative 6 and add together to be 1. So because they times together to be a negative, so negative 6, we know that one of them is going to be positive and one's going to be negative. Because for two numbers to multiply together to be a negative, one's going to have to be positive and one's going to have to be negative. If they were both positive, they would times together to be a positive. If they were both negative, negative times a negative is a positive as well. So because they're timesing together to be a negative, one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. So we're looking for two numbers that will times together to be negative 6 and will add together to be 1. We could list some of the options down here if we wanted to, such as you could think of the numbers that times together to be negative 6, such as 6 and negative 1, or negative 6 and 1, or 3 and negative 2, and negative 3 and 2. So you could think of some numbers that will times together to be negative 6, and look at the options and see which ones will add together to be 1. So here if we had 6 and negative 1, negative 1 plus 6 is 5. So it's not going to be that one, so it's not that one. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5, so it's not going to be that one. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1, and that's what we're looking for. So it's going to be that option there. So it's going to be a 3 and a negative 2. And also just to show here, negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1, so it's not going to be that option. So it's going to be this option here. So it's going to be x plus 3 and x minus 2. And that's it. So here, what we done was we considered the pairs of numbers that will times together to be negative 6, and we looked for the one which would add together to be 1, because it's plus x, which is plus 1x. So we're looking for numbers that add together to be 1. And that's it. So that's our answer. In brackets, x plus 3, and then brackets, x minus 2. Now, as you get better at these, you'll be able to spot those numbers straight away. Actually, whenever I'm factorizing these, I tend not to write these lists down. And whenever I was looking for two numbers that times together to be minus 6 and add together to be 1, I just consider straight away negative 2 and 3, because negative 2 plus 3 was 1, and the times together to be minus 6. But just to show you in this video, I've just written down the pairs there. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 2. Okay, this time we've been asked to factorize x squared plus 5x plus 6. So we've been asked to factorize this quadratic. So because it's x squared, we're going to put two brackets down, bracket, 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 and we're going to put x's at the front of both brackets. So a bracket with an x and a bracket with an x. Now we want to find two numbers that will times together to be 6 and will add together to be the number in front of the x, the coefficient of x, which is 5. So in terms of two numbers which will times together to be 6 and add together to be 5, I'm thinking 3 and 2, because 3 times 2 is equal to 6, and 3 plus 2 is equal to 5. So that's it, we've factorized that one straight away, because we were looking for two numbers that times together to be 6 and added together to be 5, and that was just going to be 3 and 2. So that's it, so it's going to be x plus 3, and then in brackets, x plus 2. And that's it. Now, if you wanted to check your answers, you could expand your brackets if you wanted to. You could do x times x is x squared, x times 2 is 2x, 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times 2 is 6. And then if you simplify that, you'd get x squared plus 5x plus 6. So you know you're right. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 3. Okay, so question number 3, we've been asked to factorize x squared plus 9x plus 20. So it's a quadratic, and we've been asked to factorize it, so we want to put the brackets in, so bracket, 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 bracket. It's x squared, so we're going to put x's at the front of both brackets. And then we're looking for two numbers that times together to be 20, and we'll add together to be 9. So in terms of two numbers that times together to be 20 and add together to be 9, the numbers that times together to be 20, well, 1 and 20, well, no, they don't add together to be 9. 2 and 10, well, they don't add together to be 9. 4 and 5, yeah, they add together to be 9. So it's going to be plus 4 and plus 5. So our answer would be x plus 4 in brackets and then x plus 5. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 4. Okay, question number 4, we've been asked to factorize x squared plus 10x plus 9. Okay, so it's a quadratic and we've been asked to factorize it, so we want to put our brackets in, so bracket, 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 bracket. It's an x squared, so we're going to put x's at the front of both brackets. And we want to find two numbers that times together to be 9 and they add together to be 10. So here, one thing I notice here is the number adding to be is one more than what they're timesing to be. Quite often when that's the case, it's going to be the number and 1. So for instance here, it's going to be 9 times 1, because 9 times 1 is equal to 9, and 9 plus 1 is going to be 10. It's going to be one more. So it's going to be plus 1 and plus 9. And actually, one thing I want to mention here that I haven't mentioned in any of the other questions yet is that if you wrote, for instance, for the last one, instead of x plus 4 and x plus 5, and you wrote x plus 5 and x plus 4 the other way around, that doesn't matter, because remember, if you times two numbers together, it doesn't matter what order they're in. You could do 2 times 7 or 7 times 2, you get 14 both ways. So here, if you have x plus 1 and x plus 9, you could write it the way around if you wanted to be x plus 9 and x plus 1, but they're still right, okay? So you would get the marks no matter what. So x plus 1 and x plus 9. And that's it. So those two numbers, 1 and 9, they times together to be 9 and they add together to be 10. And that's it. We've factorized it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 5. Okay, so question number 5, we've been asked to factorize x squared minus 7x plus 12. Okay, so we've been asked to factorize this quadratic, so we want to put our brackets in, so bracket, 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 bracket. We've got x squared at the front, so it's going to be x's at the front of both brackets, because x times x is x squared. Now this time we're looking for two numbers that times together to be 12, so that's straightforward, but they're going to add together to be minus 7, negative 7. The coefficient of x, the number in front of the x here is minus 7. So the two numbers will times together to be 12 and they'll add together to be minus 7. So because they times together to be a positive, we're thinking numbers is just, to be 12. I'm thinking 2 and 6 or 3 and 4, 1 or 12, but none of those are going to add together to be a negative. So remember that not only a positive times a positive is a positive, but a negative times a negative is also a positive. So we want, in this case, a negative number times a negative number. So in terms of numbers that times together to be 12 and add together to be minus 7, I'm thinking minus 3 and minus 4. Because minus 3 times minus 4 would be 12, but minus 3 plus minus 4 would be minus 7. So that's it, we've factorized it. So the answer would be x minus 3 and x minus 4 times x minus 4. And you could write those the way around if you wanted to, x minus 4 and x minus 3, but we're right. Okay, question number 6. This time we've been asked to factorize x squared minus 2x minus 24. So it's a quadratic and we've been asked to factorize it, so let's put our brackets down, bracket, 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 bracket. The term at the front is x squared, so let's put x's at the front of both brackets. And now we're looking for two numbers that times together to be minus 24 and they add together to be minus 2. So in terms of numbers that times together to be minus 24, well, because it's minus 24, that means one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. Because they're multiplying to be a negative, you're going to have one positive and one negative. Now, normally I just work this out in my head, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down some options of numbers that times together to be minus 24. So we could have minus 1 and 24. We could have minus 24 and 1. We could have 2 and minus 12. We could have minus 2 and 12. We could have minus 3 and 8. We could have 3 and minus 8. We could have 4 and minus 6. We could have minus 6. We could have minus 4 and 6 and so on. So we've got lots of options there. And we're looking for the ones that times together to be minus 24. Well, all of those do, but they add together to be minus 2. So minus 1 plus 24, well, that's 23, so it's not that option. Minus 1 plus 24 is 23, so it's not going to be that option. Minus 24 plus 1 is minus 23, so it's not going to be that option. Minus 12 plus 2 would be minus 10, so it's not that option. Minus 2 plus 12 is 10, so it's not that option. Minus 3 plus 8 is equal to 5, so it's not that option. Minus 8 plus 3 is minus 5, so it's not that option. So it's going to be one of these options here, I believe. Minus 6 plus 4 is minus 2, and that's what we're looking for. So that's it, so minus 6 and 4, or 4 minus 6. So plus 4 and minus 6. And that's it, we've factorised it. Now actually, if I was doing that in my head and I was trying to find numbers that times together to be minus 24 and add together to be minus 2, I would know because they're times together to be minus 24, it's one of each, so a positive and a negative. And because they add together to be minus 2, I know that the numbers are going to be pretty close together. So I would straight away think of 4 and 6 and just think which one's going to be positive and negative. And because it's minus 2, I would make the 6 negative, so that'd be minus 6 and 4, because minus 6 plus 4 would be equal to minus 2. And that's it. Okay, let's look at the next one. So our next one, question number 7. So I'm going to do this next one without doing the list. So here says factorise x squared minus 6x minus 27. So let's put our brackets down. It's a quadratic and we want to factorise it. So let's put x's, because it's x squared, let's put x's at the front of both brackets. And this time we want to find two numbers that times together to be minus 27 and that add together to be minus 6. So because the times together to be minus 27, one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. And then because it's 27, I'm thinking, what are the factors of 27? So like 1 and 27, 3 and 9. And 3 and 9 is going to be quite useful here because it's minus 6. So we want them to add together. Remember, one's positive and one's a negative, and we want them to add together to be minus 6. So I'm thinking if we have minus 9 and plus 3, if you had minus 9 times 3, that's minus 27. And minus 9 plus 3, well, if you're minus 9 and you go back up 3, you get to minus 6. So that's it. And with these factorising quadratics, the more you do, the quicker you get at them. So you'll become really confident in factorising these quadratics. And you'll be able to spot things like this quite easily as you do more and more and more of them. When you're just beginning, it can be quite daunting. And you think, well, I'm never going to be able to spot these. I have to write these lists out. But the more you do actually become quite confident in them. And you actually be able to spot the patterns and think, yeah, I know how to do this one really quickly. So the answer would be x minus 9 and then x plus 3. Or remember, you could have those the other way around, and x plus 3 and x minus 9. Okay, let's get our next one, question number 8. Okay, so question number 8, we've got factorise x squared minus 36. Now this question is a bit different than the first 7 so far. And at the beginning of this video, I said that the videos in Corbettmaths would be quite useful for you were 118, which is factorising quadratics like this, 119 and 119a, and they're ones whenever you've got numbers in front of the x squared, and then 120, and that focuses on this special case, and it's called the difference, because you've got to take out the difference between two squareds. If you get something squared, subtract something squared, you can use this special type of factorization to help you factorize them really quickly and easily. I mean, you could look at it and say, well, you got x squared, so it's a quadratic. The two numbers will times together to be minus 36, and they'll add together to be 0 because the 0x is in the middle, and you can consider it that way, but there's a much easier way to consider it. And that is that if you've got two things that are squared, and then you've got a take away in between them, you can put the brackets down. You've got x squared, so we're going to square root that to be x and x. And then because we've got 36, we square root the 36, which is 6, and we do one bracket with a plus and one bracket with a minus. And it's called the difference between two squareds, and that's where you square root both of them. You put them in the brackets, so you put one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. And again, you could put a minus sign and a plus sign, that doesn't matter. And let's just check it works. X times x is x squared, yes. X times minus 6 would be minus 6x. And then you've got 6 times x, which is 6x. And if you do minus 6x plus 6x, that's 0, so that's great. And then you get 6 times minus 6, which is minus 36. So that works. So that's it, we've factorised it. And that's called the difference between two squareds. And it's really important to be able to spot those. And again, the more times you factorise quadratics, you'll be able to spot things like that really quickly and easily. So it's going to be bracket x plus 6, bracket x minus 6. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 9. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 9. So question number 9, we've been asked to factorise x squared plus 5x minus 24. So it's a quadratic and we've been asked to factorise it. So let's put our brackets down, bracket, 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 bracket. And because it's an x squared at the front, we're going to put x's at the front of both brackets. Now here, we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to be minus 24, and they will add together to be 5. Now, because they times together to be a negative, that means that one's positive and one's a negative, and they're going to add together to be 5. So let's think of numbers that will times together to be minus 24. So I'm thinking in this case, I'm thinking off the top of my head, I'm thinking minus 3 and 8. Because if we had minus 3 and 8, minus 3 times 8 is minus 24. And then if you had minus 3 and you add 8, you get that's equal to 5. And that's what I mentioned earlier on in the video, that as you do more and more of these, you get to spot those answers straight away. Alternatively, if you didn't spot those straight away, you could write down the numbers at times together to be minus 24, such as minus 1 and 24, 1 and minus 24, 2 and minus 12, minus 2 and 12, minus 3 and 8, 3 and minus 8, 4 and minus 6, minus 4 and 6. And then you could then see that all of those times together to be minus 24, and then just check which ones add together to be 5, and you'll see it's going to be this one here, the minus 3 and 8 one. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 10. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 10. So question number 10, we've been asked to factorize x squared plus 8x plus 16. So here's a quadratic, and we want to factorize it. So let's put our brackets down, bracket, 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 bracket. It's got an x squared at the front, so let's put x's at the front of both brackets. And we want to find two numbers that times together to be 16, and they will add together to be 8. So that's going to be quite straightforward actually, because 4 times 4 is 16, and 4 plus 4 is 8. So it's going to be x plus 4, so x plus 4, and x plus 4. And that's it, so x plus 4, and then in brackets x plus 4. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 11. Okay, so question number 11, we've been asked to factorize x squared minus 121. Now, this is just like question number 8, because we've got a difference between two squareds. So it's that special case. So we'll do bracket, 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 bracket. It's got x squared and 121. They're both squares, and we've got the difference. So we're going to square root them both and put one bracket with a plus sign and one with a minus. So we've got x squared, so we're going to put x's at the front of the brackets. We've got 121, and if we square root that, we get 11. And then we'll put one bracket with a plus sign and one bracket with a minus sign. So it's going to be x plus 11 and x minus 11, and that's it. So x plus 11 and x minus 11. And again, you could check that. If you expand your brackets, you'll get x squared minus 121. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 12. So question number 12, we've been asked to factorize x squared plus 7x minus 78. So again, it's a quadratic, and we want to factorize it. So let's put our brackets down, bracket, 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 bracket. We've got an x squared, so let's put an x at the front of both brackets. And we want to find two numbers that times together to be minus 78 and add together to be 7. So we want to find two numbers that whenever we times them together, we get minus 78, and when we add them, we get 7. Now, in terms of 78, what I was thinking is, well, I know that 72 is in the 6 times tables, so 78 would be in the 6 times tables as well. And 6 times 12 is 72, so 6 times 13. So 6 times 13 is equal to 78. Now, whenever we add them together, we want to get it equal to 7. So that means that I want it to be minus 6 and 13, because minus 6 times 13 is minus 78, and minus 6 plus 13 is equal to 7. So that would be our answer, x minus 6 and x plus 13. And that's it. If you needed some help in terms of thinking of numbers that times together to be 78, you could write down the factors of 78, and that might help you. But our answer will be x minus 6, x plus 13. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 13. Okay, so question number 13, we've been asked to factorize x squared plus 4x minus 12. So it's a quadratic, and we want to factorize it. So let's put our brackets down, and it's x squared, so let's go for x's at the front of both brackets, and we want to find two numbers that times together to be minus 12 and add together to be 4. So in terms of numbers that times together to be minus 12, well, I'm thinking of 1 and minus 12, 2 and minus 6, 3 and minus 4, and also with the minus signs the other way around. Now we want them to add together to be 4, so I'm thinking the 2 and the 6. I'm thinking that that's going to be minus 2 and 6, because minus 2 times 6 would be equal to minus 12, and minus 2 plus 6 would be equal to 4. So that's it. So the answer would be x minus 2 and x plus 6. And that's it. That's our answer. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 14. Okay, so question number 14, it's a bit similar to question numbers 11 and 8. They're different between two squareds. So we're going to go for bracket, 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 bracket. And as I mentioned before, you get to spot these quite easily. You've got your squares, and you've got your subtracting between them, your difference between two squares. And so you just square root them both. So x and 5, and x and 5, and one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. So we've factorized it. And if we wanted to check it, we could do x times x is x squared, x times minus 5 is minus 5x, 5 times x is 5x, and you add them together, you get 0, and then 5 times 5 is minus 25, so it'll just be x squared minus 25. So that's it, that's our answer, x plus 5 and x minus 5. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 15. Okay, so question number 15, we've been asked to factorize y squared minus 9y plus 14. So this question is a bit different than the other ones because we've got y's instead of x's, but that doesn't really change how we approach it. So we're going to do bracket, 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 bracket because it's a quadratic and we're factorizing it. We've got y squared, so we're going to go for y's at the front of both brackets. And we want to find two numbers that times together to be 14 and they add together to be minus 9. So because it times together to be a positive but add together to be a negative, that means they're both going to be negative because a negative times a negative is a positive. And in terms of 14, well, the factors of 14 are 1 and 14 and 2 and 7. So we're going to go for minus 2 and minus 7 because minus 2 times minus 7 is 14. Minus 2 plus minus 7 will be minus 9. So that's it, that's our answer. Y minus 2 and y minus 7. And that's it. Okay, let's look at the next question, question number 16. So question number 16 is a bit similar to questions 14, 11, and 8. There's a difference between two squares. They're both squares. So let's factorize it. So do bracket, 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 bracket. And whenever we want to factorize things that are different between two squares, we've got the takeaway and two squares. We just square root them and put them in both brackets, and one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. So the square root of 49 is equal to 7. So we've got 7 at the front of both brackets. And then we've got y squared, so that'd be y and y. And then one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. So it'd be 7 plus y and 7 minus y. And that's it. So 7 plus y and 7 minus y. And that's it. We've factorized it. Okay, let's look at the next question, question number 17. Okay, so question number 17, again, it's another difference between two squares because y squared is obviously squared, y squared. We've got 9w squared, and that's something squared as well. If you square 3w times 3w is 9w squared. So this is still a difference between two squares. So we're going to do our brackets, bracket, 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 bracket. We're going to square root them both, so that's going to be y and y. And the square root of 9w squared would be 3w and 3w. 3w, so that's a w there, w, so a really bad w, I'll write it out properly down there. And then we're going to do one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. So that's it, we've factorized it, we've square rooted them both, done with a plus sign and a minus sign, and that's it. So our answer is y plus 3w and y minus 3w. And I've done that one a bit more tidily. And that's it. Okay, let's look at the next question, question number 18. Okay, so question number 18, we've been asked to factorize x squared minus 38x plus 72. Okay, so we want to factorize this, so let's put our brackets down, bracket, 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 bracket. And we're going to put x's in the front of both brackets. And we want to find two numbers that times together to be 72 and add together to be minus 38. So because they times together to be a positive and add together to be a negative, we're going to put negatives in both of the brackets because we know that a negative times a negative is a positive and they add together to be a negative. And in terms of two numbers that times together to be 72 and add together to be minus 38, I'm thinking, well, 2 and 36, because 2 times 36 is equal to 72. And minus 2 plus minus 36 would be also equal to minus 38. So it's going to be minus 2 and minus 36. And let's just check that. Minus 2 times minus 36 is 72. And minus 2 plus minus 36 is minus 38. So that's it. So x minus 2 and x minus 36. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 19. Okay, so question number 19, we've been asked to factorize x squared plus 14x minus 51. Okay, so let's put our brackets down, bracket, 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 and we've got x's in the front of both brackets. I want to find two numbers that times together to be minus 51 and add together to be 14. Okay, so because it times together to be a negative, we're going to have one positive and one negative. And now we need to think of the factors of 51. So the factors of 51, well, it's not even. It's divisible by 3. If we do 3 times 17, that's equal to 51. Actually, that might be useful here because we could have 17 and minus 3. Because minus 3 times 17 would be minus 51. And minus 3 plus 17 is 14. So that's it. So it's going to be x plus 17 and x minus 3. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 20. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 20. So question number 20, we've been asked to factorize y squared plus 32y plus 240. Okay, so we want to factorize this, and it's a quadratic, so bracket, 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 bracket. And in the front of our brackets, we're going to put y, and we're looking for two numbers that times together to be 240 and add together to be 32. Now it's a calculator question, so you can consider using your calculator to help you think of numbers that times together to be 240. I'll probably start off with some of the obvious ones like 10 and 24. 10 times 24 is 240, but they add together to be 34 rather than 32. Then I might consider something such as 12 and 20, because 12 times 20 is 240, and 12 plus 20 is equal to 32. So that's it, so it's going to be plus 12 and plus 20. And that's it, we've factorised it. And sometimes you might find that you're factorising quadratics on a calculator paper, and that means you can use your calculator to help you try and find the numbers at times together to be the number on the end. Okay, and that's it. So the answer would be y plus 12, and then brackets y plus 20. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 21. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 21. So question number 21 says factorise y squared minus 12y minus 64. So we've been asked to factorise this quadratic, so let's put down our brackets, bracket, 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 and let's put y's at the front of both brackets. And we're going to find two numbers that times together to be minus 64 and add together to be minus 12. So in terms of numbers that times together to be minus 64, I'm thinking numbers such as 2 minus 32, or 4 minus 16, even 8 minus 8. But we want them to add together to be minus 12. So I'm thinking of that 16 and 4. So I'm going to go for minus 16 and plus 4, because minus 16 times 4 would be minus 64, and minus 16 plus 4 would be minus 12. So that's it. So our answer would be y minus 16, brackets y plus 4. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 22. Okay, so question number 22, we've been told that Freddie has been asked to factorise x squared minus 11x plus 30. And his answer is x plus 5, x plus 6. And we've been asked to explain his mistake. Okay, so we could expand these brackets, but actually I'm just going to look at this. If we were asked to factorise this, and actually just factorise it and see what we get. So if I was asked to factorise this, the first thing I would do is I put x's at the front of both brackets, and Freddie's got those, fantastic. Now we're looking for two numbers that times together to be 30 and add together to be minus 11. So we know that if they're going to times together to be 30 but add together to be minus 11, they can't both be positive. They're both going to have to be negative. So it's going to have to be a negative times a negative to give us a positive, but add together to be a minus. So that means if they're times together to be 30 and adding together to be minus 11, actually it's going to be minus 5 and minus 6, because minus 5 times minus 6 is 30. And minus 5 plus minus 6 will be minus 11. So Freddie's mistake is he shouldn't have used add signs, he should have used subtracts in each of the brackets. And that's it, so let's explain that. And that's it, I've just explained that Freddie should have used subtract signs in the brackets, so it should be x minus 5 and x minus 6. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 23. Okay, so question number 23 says a quadratic expression x squared plus ax plus 24 can be factorised. So this can be factorised, and a is a positive integer. So it's a positive integer. And we've been asked to find how many possible values are there for a. Okay, so since this can be factorised, that means it can be put into two brackets. So we can have a bracket, a bracket, a bracket, and a bracket, and we can put x's in both brackets. And we know that the two numbers will times together to be 24. And because this is a positive, they're also going to add together to be a positive. So that means they're going to be a plus sign and a plus sign. It's not going to be two minuses, because if a is a positive integer, they add together to be a positive and not a negative number there. So what we need to do is think what numbers here could times together to be 24. Well, we could have 12 and 2. They times together to be 24. We could have x plus 24 and x plus 1, like we had our option. We could have x plus 3 and x plus 8. They times together to be 24. What else would times together to be 24? 4 and 6, x plus 4 and x plus 6. And they would be all the possible options. If we were given this and it can be factorised, that means it can be put into brackets. It means we can find two numbers that times together to be 24, and they'll add together to be a positive. So they're all our options. Now what we need to do is we need to think what these possible values can be. So remember that if we were to factorise and have in our brackets 12 and 2, they're the two numbers that times together to be this number, but they add together to be the number in front of the x. Or you could expand your brackets if you wanted to, but I'm just going to do 12 plus 2. So here in that case, a would be equal to 14. You could expand the brackets, and if you'd done that, you'd get x squared plus 2x plus 12x plus 24, and then that would be 14x in the middle. We just also know that they'll add together to be the number in front of the x there. Here, a is equal to 25. Here, a would be equal to 3 plus 8 is equal to 11. And here, 4 plus 6 is equal to 10. So that means there's four possible values for a. A could be equal to 14, 25, 11, and 10. And that's it. So how many possible values are there for a? The answer is 4. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 24. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 24. So question number 24, we've been asked to factorise 2y squared plus 7y minus 15. Now this question is a little bit different than the ones we've looked at previously, because all the ones we've looked at so far have been either x squared or y squared. Now we did have some where there was perhaps 9w squared, but it was a difference in 2 squareds question. But here, this one's a bit different because we've got a number in front of the y squared here other than 1, so it's 2y squared. Now I'm going to approach these questions in two different ways. I'm going to be using inspection, so that's the approach that we've been using so far, and that's typically the approach that I personally would use whenever I was factorising quadratics such as this. But I'm also going to show you the split in the middle technique as well, because that's quite popular as well. So I'll do these questions using both techniques. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start off by using inspection. So if I was to factorise something like this, it's a quadratic. So we're going to put down our brackets. So bracket, 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 bracket. And this time, instead of just being y squared, it's 2y squared. So we're going to have a 2y and a y, because we know from expanding two brackets that if we do 2y times y, that's 2y squared. Okay, so now to find this number and this number, we know that the two numbers on the end will times together to be minus 15. So this number times this number is minus 15. But this number plus this number won't be equal to 7. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to figure out which numbers times together to be minus 15, and then where we would put them in these brackets, so that whenever we expand the brackets, we get that's equal to 7y in the middle. Okay, and know that whenever we're expanding our brackets, we would do 2y times y, which is 2y squared. We would then do 2y times this number, and then y times this number, and they would add together to be 7y. So that's how we're going to figure out where these numbers should go. Okay, so these numbers will times together to be minus 15. So I'm thinking of numbers such as 1 and minus 15. I'm just going to write some options down here. Minus 1 and 15. We could have minus 15 and 1. We could have minus 3 and 5, or minus 5 and 3. So there are possible options for the numbers that we're going to put in here. And also they can go either way around. So what I'm going to do is we want to get 7y. So if we want to get 7y, if we do 2y times 5, that'll give us 10y. So I'm going to put the plus 5 here. Now, some students at this point actually like to work in pencil and actually go, well, let's put the plus 5 there and see if this works, and then the minus 3 here. And what they do is they actually work in pencil there, so that if they get it wrong, they can actually rub those out and then correct it. So here, let's just check this. 2y times y is 2y squared. Fantastic. 2y times 5 is 10y, and then minus 3 times y is minus 3y, and 10y take away 3y would be our 7y in the middle. Fantastic. And then we've got minus 3 times 5 is minus 15. So that's it, we've factorised it. So what we done was we figured out which numbers times together to be minus 15. We then figured out where we would put those in the brackets so that whenever we expand it, we get our 7y in the middle. And some students, as I said, like to do that bit in pencil until they get really confident with being able to do it in their head. And that's it, so the answer would be 2y minus 3, and then y plus 5. And that's it. And also, again, well, like all the other ones, the more of these you do, you get much better at them. So that's why I tend to use inspection, because I've done so many using inspection, I can spot it quite quickly and easily. Some people prefer to use split in the middle technique, and that's okay, and I'll show you that as well in a second, okay? But I would just say, if you are using inspection, the more practice you get really good at it. Okay, let's get this to the question now about using split in the middle. Okay, so we're now going to approach this question using the split in the middle term technique. If you want to recap of that, if you go to Corbettmaths, there's a video tutorial there on the split in the middle technique. I'll actually put a link to it in this point of the video now as well, so if you click that link, it brings you to that video. I'm going to assume now that you've watched that video, so you're pretty familiar with it, so I'm just going to go through how to use it. Okay, so if we had this quadratic and we wanted to factorise it using the split in the middle technique, the first step is to multiply the coefficient of the y squared, that 2, by the minus 15. And 2 times minus 15, 2 times minus 15 is equal to minus 30. So we want to now think of the numbers that times together to be minus 30, and they will add together to be 7. So let's write down the numbers that times together to be minus 30 here. So we've got minus 3 and 10. We've got 3 and minus 10. We've got 2 and minus 15, minus 2 and 15. We've got 6 and minus 5. We've got minus 6 and 5. We've got minus 1 and 30 and 1 and 30. Okay, so we've written down the numbers there that times together to be minus 30, and we want to think of, so we've just times together the A and the C, the number at the front there and the number on the end. So 2 times minus 15 is minus 30, and we've written down the numbers that add together to be minus 30. Okay, now we're looking for the ones, the pair that will add together to be the B, the number in the middle, the 7. That would actually be our first option here, minus 3 plus 10. Because minus 3 plus 10 is 7, and all the other options won't give you 7. So that's going to be the option we want, and there's none of these ones here. Okay, and actually, to be honest, as you get good with this, again, you don't need to list all the options down. Once you know that it's 2 times 15 is minus 30, and you're looking for two numbers that times together to be minus 30 and add together to be 7, you can just get the minus 3 and 10 that way. Okay, so we've now got these options here. What we're now going to do is we're going to split this middle term up, this 7y, into a minus 3 and a 10. Now you could do it as a minus 3 and a 10, or a 10 and a minus 3, it doesn't matter which way around you do it. So let's write our 2y squared. And then we had 7y, but we're going to make it, instead of being minus 7y, we're going to use a minus 3y and a 10y. So we could write a minus 3y here and a 10y here. So we could write minus 3y plus 10y, or we could write plus 10y minus 3y, because it's still 7y, but we're just writing it a different way. And then we've still got a minus 15 on the end. So whichever pair you go for, you're going to split that middle term up into, split in the middle, into either a minus 3y and a 10y, or a 10y and a minus 3y. Now, it doesn't actually matter which way around you do it, so you could do minus 3 and 10, or 10 and minus 3, and you can do it either way around. Okay, so now we've split the middle term up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to factorize these two terms, and we're going to factorize these two terms. So let's start off by factorizing these two terms. So here we've got 2y squared plus 10y. Well, if I was to factorize these, I can take a 2y out. So let's take 2y out, and then a bracket, and let's divide both of these terms by 2y. 2y squared divided by 2y would be y, and 10y divided by 2y would be plus 5, so it's 5. And that's it. So we've now factorized these first two terms. Now what we're going to do is we're going to factorize these second two terms. So we've got minus 3y minus 15. Both of these terms we can divide by minus 3. We can divide both of them by minus 3. So I'm going to take minus 3 out, and then I'm going to put in brackets, and if I divide both of them by minus 3y divided by minus 3 would just be y, and minus 15 divided by minus 3 would be 5, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so 5. Now you'll notice here that you get the same bracket twice, and that should be the case. Whenever you do the split in the middle technique, you should get the same bracket twice. So we've got here y plus 5 and y plus 5, so we've got the same bracket twice. Now if we have a look at this, we've got 2y lots of this bracket and minus 3 lots of this bracket. So altogether we've got 2y minus 3 lots of this bracket. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this and this in a bracket, because we've got 2y minus 3 lots of this bracket. So we've got 2y minus 3 lots of y plus 5. And that's it, we've factorized it. And if we look at our two techniques, in our first approach we got 2y minus 3, y minus 5, and in the second approach we got the same thing. Now either approach is fine. Perhaps your teacher might prefer you use one approach than the other, and that's totally fine as well. I tend to use the inspection technique rather than the split in the middle, but I can see the benefits of that one as well, so I don't mind if students use either of them, as long as they use it correctly. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 25. Okay, so question number 25, we've been asked to factorize fully 2y squared minus 50. Now this question we're not going to do twice, because we don't need to, because this is actually a difference between two squareds question. Now when we first look at this, if we look at 2y squared and 50, they don't look like squares, but it says factorize fully. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take the 2 out to begin with. We're going to factorize it once using basic factorization. So 2y squared minus 50, we can take a 2 out there, so 2 and then in brackets, and then if you divide both terms by 2, you'd get y squared minus 25, close brackets. Now you can see this is just like questions 8 and 11 and 14 and 16, where it's just the difference between two squareds. So now what we can do is we can keep our 2 there, and then do bracket, 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 a y at the front of both brackets. We had 25, so we're going to square root that to be 5 and 5, and we're going to do one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. And that's it, we've factorized it. So sometimes with the difference between two squareds, you might have to take a number out first and then do the difference between two squareds. And that's it. So the answer would be 2 bracket y plus 5, and then in brackets y minus 5. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 26. So question number 26, we've been asked to factorize y squared minus 13y plus 36. So this one's quite straightforward, so let's just put our brackets down, bracket, 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 because it's just y squared, so it's quite straightforward. So we're going to go for y, and I want to find two numbers that times together to be 36 and add together to be minus 13. So I'm thinking that's going to be equal to, let's think of numbers that time, well, they're both going to be negative. So they're both going to be negative, because a negative times a negative is a positive, but they add together to be a negative. And then in terms of numbers, the times together to be 36 and add together to be minus 13, I'm thinking not minus 3 and minus 12, perhaps minus 4 and minus 9, because minus 4 times minus 9 would be 36, and minus 4 plus minus 9 would be minus 13. So that's it. So y minus 4 and y minus 9. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 27. Okay, so question number 27, we've been asked to factorise 2w squared minus 9w plus 4. Okay, so again, let's use the inspection technique first. So bracket, 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 bracket. We're going to go for 2w and a w because they would times together to be 2w squared. Now we want to find two numbers that times together to be 4, and that whenever we put them in the brackets and expand the brackets, we're going to get our minus 9. Now, because it's minus 9, it's going to be a negative and a negative. We want to find two negatives that times together to be 4. So it's either going to be -1 and -4, or -4 and -1, or -2 and -2. Now, some students like to get a pencil here and at this point write in the possible options. So for instance, they might go, oh, is it going to be a 2 and a 2, -2 and -2? And let's just check that. So 2w times w would be 2w squared, fantastic. They'd go 2w times -2 would be -4w. And then you've got another minus 2w, so it'd be minus 6w, so it's not that option. Then they might put the 4 here and the 1 here. Now I'm doing these ones wrong on purpose, I know they're the right option, okay? So 2w times w would be 2w squared, 2w times minus 1 would be minus 1w, and then another minus 4w would be minus 5w, so that's not the one we're looking for. And then if we do it as minus 1 and minus 4, this should give us the right option. So let's just check that. And actually, as you get good at these, you'll be able to spot why that's the case. And I'll explain that in a second. So let's just check it's right. 2w times 2w is 2w squared. 2w times minus 4 will be minus 8w. Minus another w will be minus 9w. And then you've got your minus 1 times minus 4, which is 4. So that's it. That's the right answer. So 2w minus 1. And then in brackets, w minus 4. And actually, to be honest, in terms of being able to find these numbers and where they go, so because we know we're looking for minus 9w, I'm thinking, well, if I had a minus 4w there, then I would have 2w times minus 4, that's minus 8. And then we just need to go another 1 down, so then I put the minus 1 there. So it just sort of makes sense to put them that way. Okay, let's have a look at that same question now using the split in the middle technique. Okay, so if we were to use the split in the middle technique in this question, we take the a and the c, the number in front of the w squared is the a, so that's the 2, and the c is the constant on the end, 4, and you're going to do 2 times 4, and 2 times 4 is equal to 8, so 2 times 4 is equal to 8. So we're looking for numbers that times together to be 8, and they times together to be 8, and they're going to add together to be minus 9. So numbers that times together to be 8 and add together to be minus 9, I'm thinking minus 1 or minus 8, because minus 1 times minus 8 is equal to 8, and minus 1 plus minus 8 is equal to minus 9. Okay, so we've now found the two numbers. Now we're going to split this middle term up into a minus 1 and a minus 8. And it doesn't actually matter which way around you do it. So for instance, we could do 2w squared. We're using a minus 1 and a minus 8 because that's still minus 9, so we're just splitting it up and writing it another way. So minus 1w, so that would just be minus w, minus 1w, and then a minus 8w. And then we've still got the plus 4 on the end. Okay, so we've now split these up. We've split the middle term up into minus w and minus 8w because we know that we were using minus 1 and minus 8. Now let's factorize the first two terms and then factorize the second two terms. Okay, so if we factorize the first two terms, you can see here we've got 2w squared minus w. We can take a w out here. So let's do w and then in brackets, and let's divide both of these terms by w. So 2w squared divided by w would be 2w. And then we've got minus, and then w divided by w is 1, and then close brackets. So we've got w brackets 2w minus 1. And if we go back to our previous answer from how we factorized it using inspection, we had 2w minus 1. So that's the bracket we were looking for there. Okay? Okay, now we want to factorize the next two terms, and we've got minus 8w plus 4. Now, in terms of the minus 8w plus 4, they're both divisible by 4, but actually what we want to do is we want to divide both of them by minus 4. And the reason we want to divide both of them by minus 4 is we want to get the same thing in the bracket here. And if we just divide both of these by 4, we're going to get inside the bracket a minus 2w, but we want to get the 2w. So we're going to divide both of these by minus 4. So we're going to do minus 4, and then in brackets, and we'll divide both of these by minus 4. So minus 8w divided by minus 4 would be 2w, because when you divide a negative by negative, you get a positive, so it's going to be 2w. And 4 divided by minus 4 would be minus 1. And that's it. And the reason I chose minus 4 rather than 4 was to make sure we got the same thing in the bracket there, okay? And because we had minus 8w, if we divided it by just 4, we would have plus 4, and then we'd have minus 2w here. So I would just divide both of those by minus 4. Now here, if you have a look at it, you've got w lots of that bracket and minus 4 lots of that bracket. So altogether we would have w minus 4 lots of that bracket, 2w minus 1, close brackets. And that's it. And as you can see, we've got the same answer both ways. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 28. So question number 28, we've been asked to factorise 2x squared plus 5x plus 2. So we want to factorise this, so let's put our brackets down, bracket, 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 bracket. And we know it's 2x squared, so we're going to go for a 2x and an x. And we know the two numbers will times together to be 2. Now we want to put the 1 and the 2 in these brackets so that we get a 5x in the middle. So that means we're going to put the 2 there so that we get the 2x times 2, which is 4x, and then plus 1 there so that we get the x times 1 is x, and the 4x plus the x would be the 5x. So that's it, 2x plus 1 brackets x plus 2. And that's it. So that's how I'd factorize that. If you're using the split in the middle technique, you times together the 2 and the 2. 2 times 2 is equal to 4. You want to find two numbers that times together to be 4 and add together to be 5. So that'll be 4 and 1. So 4 times 1 is equal to 4, and 4 plus 1 is equal to 5. Then what we're going to do is we're going to split this middle term up into a 4x and an x. So let's do that. So 2x squared plus 4x. So that's split up into 4x, and then plus x, that's 1x, plus 2. So we've split that up into a 4x and a 1x. Now let's factorize the first two terms and factorize the second two terms. So the first two terms, we can take a 2x out there, so 2x, and then in brackets, so if we divide both of these by 2x, 2x squared divided by 2x would be x, and 4x divided by 2x is 2, so plus 2, and close brackets. And then plus, now these two terms, the x and the 2, we can only actually take a 1 out. We can't actually factorize those, so we're going to take a 1 out, so plus 1, then in brackets x plus 2, and then close brackets. So as you can see here, we've got x plus 2 and x plus 2, and that's fantastic whenever you're using the split in the middle technique. So we've got 2x lots of x plus 2 and 1 lot of x plus 2, so altogether we've got 2x plus 1 lots of x plus 2. And that's it, we've factorized it using the split in the middle technique. Okay, let's look at our next question. So question number 29, we've been asked to factorize 2y squared plus 7y minus 15. So if I was factorizing this, I'd first of all put down my brackets. I'd do a 2y and a y. We want to find two numbers that times together to be minus 15. And then whenever we put those in the brackets, that whenever we expand the brackets, we get 7y. So I'm thinking first of all, 15, I'm thinking of 3 and a 5. And I'm thinking actually if I put the 5 over here, 2y times 5 would give me 10y. And then I could then take away 3y's to get to that 7y. So let's just check that. 2y times y would be 2y squared. 2y times 5 is 10y's. Take away 3y's is 7y's. And then we've got our minus 15 on the end. So that's it done. 2y minus 3, and then in brackets y plus 5. And that's it. And I do like that inspection technique. That's the approach that I would typically use. But if you use the split in the middle technique, let's have a look at that now. So if we want to use the split in the middle technique, so what we do is we multiply the a and the c together. So the 2 and the minus 15. 2 times minus 15 is equal to minus 30. So we want to find two numbers that times together to be minus 30 and add together to be 7. So I'm thinking that's going to be equal to 10 and minus 3. 10 and minus 3. 10 times minus 3 is equal to minus 30, and 10 plus minus 3 is equal to 7. So that would work, so 10 and minus 3. So let's split this up into a 10 and a minus 3. I'm actually going to put the minus 3 first, so actually let's write the 2y squared first, 2y squared. I'm actually going to then do minus 3y, and then I'm going to write plus 10y. So the reason I'm doing that is then, so whenever I'm factorizing this second bracket here, I can just take out a 5 rather than having to take out a minus 3. It just makes it a little bit easier for me if that's positive. That's just my own preference. Okay, so I'm now going to factorize the first two terms, 2y squared minus 3y. So let's take y out, so y bracket. And then if we divide both of them by y, we'd get 2y minus 3, close brackets. And then we've got plus, and then we're going to divide both of these by 5. And that's why I put the 10y there, just so that I wasn't having to take out the minus as well. Okay, so 5, and then in brackets, if we divide both of these by 5, we get 2y minus 3, close brackets. So we've got y lots of 2y minus 3 and 5 lots of 2y minus 3. So altogether, we've got y plus 5 lots of 2y minus 3. And that's it, we've factorized it. Y plus 5, bracket, 2y minus 3. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 30. Okay, so question number 30, we've been asked to factorize 3y squared plus 10y minus 8. So I'm going to put my brackets down, bracket, 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 bracket. We've got 3y squared, so I'm going to go for 3y and a y because they times together to be 3y squared. Now we want to find two numbers that times together to be minus 8, and whenever we put them in the brackets and expand, we get 10y. So I'm thinking a 4 and a 2. I'm thinking if I put a 4 there, 3y times 4 would be 12y. And then if we put our minus 2 here, that would give us our minus 2y, and 12y minus 2y would be 10y. So that's it, we've factorized it. We would have 3y minus 2 and y plus 4. And let's just check that. 3y times y is 3y squared. 3y times 4 is 12y. Minus 2y is 10y, and then our minus 8. So that's it. So 3y minus 2, and then in brackets, y plus 4. And that's it. Okay, let's look at that question using the split in the middle technique. Okay, we've been asked to factorize 3y squared plus 10y minus 8. If you wanted to use a split in the middle technique, you multiply the a and the c. So 3 times minus 8 is equal to minus 24. We now want to think of two numbers that times together to be minus 24 and add together to be 10. So I'm thinking 12 and minus 2, because 12 times minus 2 is equal to minus 24, and 12 plus minus 2 would be equal to 10. Okay, so we're going to split this 10y up into a minus 2y and a 10y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write 3y squared. I'm going to put the minus 2y there just so that I can then put the plus 12y next and then minus 8, just because I like it whenever that one's positive if possible. Okay, so we've now split the 10y up into a minus 2y and 12y because they add together to be 10y. Now what we're going to do is we're going to factorize the first two terms and factorize the second two terms. So if we factorize the first two terms, we can just take out a y, so y and then in brackets. 3y squared divided by y would be 3y, and then minus, and then 2y divided by y would be 2. And then close brackets, then plus, and now we're going to divide both of these by 4. So 4, and then in brackets, 12y divided by 4 would be 3y, and minus 8 divided by 4 would be minus 2. And that's fantastic, we've got the same bracket twice. We've got y lots of 3y minus 2 and 4 lots of 3y minus 2. So altogether we've got y plus 4 lots of 3y minus 2. And that's it. So y plus 4, 3y minus 2. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 31. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 31. So question number 31, we've been asked to factorize 5x squared minus 13x minus 6. Okay, so let's start off by using inspection. So if I was to factorize this, the first thing I would do is put my brackets down. It's 5x squared, which is quite nice because it can only be 5x and x. When you've got something like 6x squared, you could have a 6x and an x, or a 3x and a 2x. So something like 5x squared is quite nice. Okay, so we're now looking for two numbers that times together to be minus 6. And when we put them in the brackets, we can expand the brackets and get minus 13x. Okay, so in terms of the minus 6, one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. So I think if we put the minus 3 there, because if we had minus 3 and 2, 5 times minus 3 would be minus 15x. And then if we put the plus 2 there, then let's just check this, because we would have 5x times x is 5x squared. 5x times minus 3 would be minus 15x. 2 times x is 2x, and if you go back up 2x, you get to minus 13x. And 2 times minus 3 would be minus 6. And that's it, we're done. So the answer would be 5x plus 2, then in brackets, x minus 3. And that's it. Okay, let's look at that same question, but using split in the middle. So if we had 5x squared minus 13x minus 6, what we're going to do is we're going to times together the a and the c. So we're going to do 5 times minus 6. So 5 times minus 6, and that's equal to minus 30. So we want to find two numbers that times together to be minus 30 and add together to be minus 13. So I'm thinking of minus 15 and 2, because minus 15 times 2 is equal to minus 30, and minus 15 plus 2 is equal to minus 13. So we're going to choose minus 15 and 2. So we're going to split the middle term up into a minus 15x and a 2x. Now I'm going to put the 2x on this side so that it's with the minus 6, so then we don't need to take out any minus numbers whenever we're factorizing it. So we're going to have 5x squared, we're then going to have minus 15x, we've then got plus 2x, and then minus 6. Okay, now let's factorize the first two terms. 5x squared minus 15x, well, we can divide both of those by 5x. So 5x, and then in brackets. And if we divide both of them by 5x squared divided by 5x is just x. And minus 15x divided by 5x will be minus 3. So that's what we get when we divide both of these by 5x. Now we've got 2x minus 6. We can divide both of those by 2, so plus 2, then in brackets, and let's divide both of them by 2. 2x divided by 2 would just be x, and minus 6 divided by 2 would be minus 3. So that's it, and as you can see, we've got the same bracket twice. That's fantastic. So we've now got 5x lots of x minus 3 and 2 lots of x minus 3. So altogether that'll be 5x plus 2 lots of x minus 3. And that's it, we've factorised it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 32. Okay, question number 32, we've been asked to factorise 7x squared minus 19x plus 12. Okay, so we want to factorise this, so I'm going to use inspection to begin with, so bracket, 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 bracket. It's quite nice because we can just choose 7x and x, they would times together to be 7x squared. Now we want to find two numbers that times together to be 12, and then whenever we put them in the brackets we get minus 19x. Because that's minus, they're both going to be negative numbers, so minus and a minus. Now we want to find two negative numbers that times together to be 12, and then when we expand the brackets we get minus 19x. So let's then actually try minus 1 and minus 12. Because 7x times minus 1 would be minus 7x, and then x times minus 12 would be minus 12x, and then that would give us our minus 19x, and then we've still got our plus 12. So that's it. So the answer would be 7x minus 12, and then in brackets x minus 1, and that's it. Okay, let's try that question now using the split in the middle technique. Okay, so if we were to do this question using the split in the middle technique, we would times together the 7 and the 12. 7 times 12 is equal to 84. So we want to find two numbers that times together to be 84. And then whenever we add them, we get that's equal to minus 19. So because they add together to be minus 19, they're both going to be negative. And 84, I'm thinking 7 times 12. So minus 7 times minus 12. Because minus 7 times minus 12 is 84. And minus 7 plus minus 12 is equal to minus 19. Okay, now we're going to split this minus 19x up into minus 7x and minus 12x. Unfortunately, they're both negative, so whenever we're dealing with the second factorization, we're going to have to take out a negative. So I'm going to put the 7 on this side, so we're going to have 7x squared minus 7x, and then minus 12x, and then plus 12. Okay, so let's factorize the first two terms. So let's take 7x out there, so 7x, and then in brackets. 7x squared divided by 7x would just be x, and then minus 7x divided by 7x would be minus 1, close brackets. Okay, next we've now got minus 12x plus 12. Well, we want this, whenever we take out the number, we want it to be a positive number of x's, so we're going to have to divide both of these by minus 12, so minus 12, and then in brackets. And minus 12x divided by minus 12 will be x, and then 12x divided by minus 12 will be minus 1. And that's great, we've got the same bracket twice. So we've got 7x lots of x minus 1 and minus 12 lots of x minus 1. So altogether we would have 7x minus 12 lots of x minus 1. And that's it. So 7x minus 12 lots of x minus 1. And that's it. Let's look at our next question, question number 33. So question number 33, we've been asked to factorise 6w squared, subtract 11w, subtract 10. So let's use inspection to begin with. So in terms of inspection, if I was factorising something like this, I put my brackets down, so bracket, 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 bracket. So some quadratics are a little bit trickier whenever we're factorising them. So this one is a bit harder because we don't know whether it's going to be 6w and w or 3w and 2w. Okay, so let's start off by looking at 6w, 6w and 3w. And the two numbers in the brackets, they're going to multiply together to be negative 10. So in terms of the numbers that could multiply together to be negative 10, they would be 10 and negative 1, or it could be negative 10 and 1, it could be negative 2 and 5, or 2 and negative 5. And remember, they could also go either way around. Now, whenever we expand our brackets, we want to get minus 11w. So let's see if any of these options would work for 6w and w, and if not, we'll change to 3w and 2w. So if we had 6w and w, so actually looking at it, it's not actually looking too promising at this point, because if we look at our options, so if we put perhaps the minus 1 there and the 10 there, plus 10 there, if we were to expand our brackets, we would get minus 6w plus 10w, which would be 4w, so that's not going to work. And then perhaps if we put the 10 over this side, we're going to get 60w or minus 60w, so that's not going to be very useful either. So let's consider the 2 and the 5. So if we had perhaps minus 2 there and plus 5 there, 6w times minus 2 would be minus 12w, but plus 5w would bring us up to minus 7w, so that's not going to work either. And then if we had minus 5 and 2, that wouldn't really work either. So I'm thinking it might actually be the 3w and 2w at the front of the brackets. So let's have a look at 3w and 2w. And we want to put two numbers in the brackets that times together to be negative 10, and when we expand our brackets we get minus 11. I'm thinking actually if we have here minus 5, we'd have 3w times minus 5, which would be minus 15w, and then if we put the plus 2 there, then we'd have plus 4w, and minus 15w plus 4w would be the minus 11w. So that would work, so that's our answer. So answer would be 3w plus 2, and then in brackets 2w subtract 5. And that's it, we've factorised it. So as you can see, that was a little bit trickier than the ones we've looked at so far, just because with the 6w squared, we had either 6w and w or 3w and 2w, and that made that one just a little bit trickier. Okay, so we've looked at inspection, but I still actually would use inspection if I was factorising that, just because even whenever I'm using inspection, I can actually go through it quite quickly and find the answer. Alternatively, we could use the split in the middle technique. So let's have a look at the split in the middle technique. So a is equal to 6 and c is equal to minus 10, and 6 times minus 10 would be equal to minus 60. So we want to find two numbers that multiply together to be minus 60 and then add together to be minus 11. I'm thinking minus 15 and 4, because minus 15 times 4 would be equal to minus 60, and minus 15 plus 4 would be equal to minus 11. So those two numbers would work. If we have minus 15 times 4, that's minus 60, and also minus 15 plus 4 is minus 11. Okay, so we now know we're going to split this middle term up into minus 15w and 4w. In terms of the order we want to do it in, I would put the minus 15w first so that we could have the 4w along with the minus 10. So when we factorize that, we're going to be taking out a positive number. Okay, so we're going to do 6w squared and then minus 15w plus 4w. So we've split that middle term up, and then minus 10. And now what we're going to do is we're going to factorise the first two terms and factorise the last two terms. So if we factorise the first two terms, we've got 6w squared subtract 15w. Both of those are divisible by 3w, so let's take 3w out and then open up our brackets. And 6w squared divided by 3w would be 2w, and then we'd have our minus. And then 15w divided by 3w would be 5. So it would be 3w and then in brackets 2w subtract 5. And then plus, and then we've got 4w subtract 10. They're both divisible by 2, so let's divide them both by 2, so 2 and then in brackets 4w divided by 2 would be 2w, and then minus 10 divided by 2 would be minus 5. And that's fantastic, we've got the same bracket twice. So we've got 3w lots of 2w minus 5 and 2 lots of 2w minus 5, so altogether we would have 3w plus 2 lots of 2w subtract 5. And that's it, we've factorised it. So with a question like that, some people would use inspection, and I would use inspection for that one, but some people also like the split in the middle for a question like that, particularly whenever you've got 6w squared where you might have 6w and w or 3w and 2w at the front of the brackets. Obviously here we still had to consider what would times together to be minus 60 and add together to be minus 11, and that would actually take a little bit of thought as well. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 34. So question number 34, we've been asked to factorise 7x squared plus 8x plus 1. Okay, so in terms of factorising this, let's use inspection to begin with. So using inspection, it's 7x squared, so that's quite nice. We can go for 7x and x. So unlike the last one, which was a bit trickier, this one's quite straightforward. And actually, the two numbers are going to times together to be 1, so it's going to be, and because they add together whenever we expand our brackets to be 8x, it's just going to be plus 1 and plus 1. And let's just check that. 7x times x is 7x squared. 7x times 1 is 7x, plus another x would be 8x, and then we've got our plus 1 on the end. So that's it. So 7x plus 1, and then in brackets, x plus 1. And that's it. Okay, so we use split in the middle on this question. What we'd do is we'd take our a and our c. Remember, the a is the coefficient of the x squared, and the c is the constant on the end. So we're going to times them together. 7 times 1. 7 times 1 is equal to 7. Now we want to find two numbers that multiply together to be 7, and they'll add together to be 8. So that will be 7 and 1, because 7 times 1 is equal to 7, and 7 plus 1 is equal to 8. So that means that we're going to split this middle term up into a 7x and a 1x. And in terms of the order we'd do it, and I probably would actually go for 7x squared, and then I would do plus 7x, and then plus 1x, or just plus x, and then we've got a plus 1 on the end. Okay, so we've split the middle term up into a 7x and a 1x. Now let's factorise each of them. So in terms of our 7x squared plus 7x, let's divide both of those by 7x, so we'd have 7x and then in brackets. 7x squared divided by 7x would just be x, and then 7x divided by 7x is 1. Okay, so now let's factorise the next two terms. So we've got an x plus 1. In terms of those, the only common factors that have will be 1, so let's take a 1 out, and then in brackets, x plus 1, and then close brackets. So that's fantastic. We've got the same bracket twice, and we've got 7x lots of x plus 1 and 1 lot of x plus 1, so that'll be 7x plus 1 lot of x plus 1. And that's it, we've factorised it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 35. Okay, question number 35, we've been asked to factorise 8y squared plus 10y subtract 3. Okay, so if I was to factorize this using inspection, I'd put my brackets down, so bracket, 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 bracket. We want to figure out what's going to go in the front of the brackets. Now, it could be an 8y and a y, or a 4y and a 2y, so those would work. And the two numbers on the end will times together to be minus 3. So that's going to be either minus 1 and 3, or 1 and minus 3. So that's quite nice in terms of the number on the end. Okay, so in terms of choosing our options, so that whenever we expand our brackets, we're going to get the 10y in the middle. What I'm thinking here is I'm thinking actually if we use a 4y and a 2y, because we want to get 10y in the middle, I think that if we had our 4y and 2y, they times together to be 8y squared. Now we want to put these numbers in the brackets so that when we expand it, we're going to get our 10y. So I'm thinking if we do a plus 3 there, because 4y times 3 would be 12y, and then that would leave us with a minus 1 there, and that would be a minus 2y, which would give us our 10y, and that's it. So let's just check that. 4y times 2y is 8y squared. 4y times 3 would be 12y. Take away 2y, which would be 10y, and then our minus 3 on the end. So that's it. So factorize it. 4y subtract 1, and then 2y plus 3, and that's it. And that's it. Okay, now let's have a look at that question using the split in the middle technique. So that was inspection. Okay, so if I was to factorize this using the split in the middle technique, I would take our a and our c and multiply them together. So 8 times minus 3 is equal to minus 24. So we're looking for two numbers that times together to be minus 24, and when we add them together, we're going to get that's equal to 10. So I'm thinking that's going to be 12 and minus 2, because 12 times minus 2 is minus 24, and minus 2 plus 12 is equal to 10. So we're going to split this middle term up into a 12y and a minus 2y. So let's write our 8y squared to begin with. Now we need to decide how we're going to split this up, either a 12y and then a minus 2y, or a minus 2y and then a 12y. If there's only one positive one, I tend to like to have that second, so I'm going to go for a minus 2y and a plus 12y, and then we've got our minus 3 on the end. And the reason I do that is so that whenever I factorize this second bracket, it's a little bit easier. Okay, so we've got 8y squared take away 2y. Let's factorize those. So we can take a 2y out, so 2y, and then in brackets. And 8y squared divided by 2y would be 4y. And then we've got minus, and then 2y divided by 2y would be 1, and then close brackets. Okay, now we want to factorize the next two terms. We've got 12y minus 3. They're both divisible by 3, so let's do plus 3, and then in brackets, and divide both of them by 3. 12y divided by 3 would be 4y, and minus 3 divided by 3 would be minus 1. And that's fantastic. We've got the same bracket twice. We've got 2y lots of 4y minus 1, and then 3 lots of 4y minus 1. So altogether we have 2y plus 3 lots of 4y minus 1. And that's it. So we've factorized that quadratic. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 36. Okay, so question number 36, we've been asked to factorize 24y squared plus 19y plus 2. Okay, so this question, it looks quite tricky to begin with because we've got 24y squared. And that means at the front of the brackets we could have a 24y and a y, a 12y and a 2y, an 8y and a 3y, a 4y and a 6y. But actually what's quite nice about this question is we've just got a 2 on the end. So when we have our brackets, the numbers at the end of the brackets will times together to be 2. And because when we expand we get plus 19y, we know it has to be a 2 and a 1. So that means that in terms of these brackets, we'll have a plus 2 and a plus 1, either way around. So that's quite nice. We just need to figure out what's going to go at the front of the brackets. Now, whenever we expand our brackets, we get 19y. So let's try 12y and 2y to begin with. Now, I know this actually isn't the right answer. So if we choose 12y and 2y in the brackets, and we've got a 2 and a 1 that we need to put in the brackets because we know that the number on the end times together to be 2, we could put a plus 1 there and a plus 2 there. And if we expanded these, we get 12y times 2y is 24y squared. Fantastic. And then in terms of the middle terms, we'd have 12y times 1, which is 12y, plus 4y. And that's only 16y, so that's not going to work. So let's change those first two terms. So it's not 12y and 2y. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm now going to try an 8y and a 3y. Because if we had 8y and 3y, we could put the 2 there, because 8y times 2y would be 16y, and then put the 1 there. And that would work. Let's just check that. 8y times 3y is 24y squared. 8y times 2 is 16y, plus another 3y would be 19y, and then 1 times 2 is 2. And so that's it. That's our answer. 8y plus 1, and then in brackets 3y plus 2. And again, as you do more and more practice of these, and if you use inspection, the more and more practice you get really good at them, and you'll be able to factorize these quite quickly. Okay, so that's the inspection technique. Now let's look at split in the middle. So if I wanted to factorize this using the split in the middle technique, I would take the a and the c and times them together. So I'm going to do 24 times 2, which is equal to 48. So I want to find two numbers that times together to be 48 and add together to be 19. So I was thinking something like 24 and 2, but if we do 24 times 2, that's 48. But when we add them together, that would be too big. Then I thought, well, we could try 3. We could do 16 times 3. 16 times 3 is equal to 48, and 16 plus 3 is equal to the 19 that we need in the middle. So that would work. So 16 and 3. So we're going to split the middle term, that 19y, up into a 16y and a 3y. So we would have, if we write this out, 24y squared plus, and then we're going to split this up into a 16y and a 3y. So let's try 16y plus 3y, and then we've got our plus 2 on the end. Okay, now let's factorize these. So in terms of 24y squared and 16y, we can divide both of them by 8y. So let's do 8y, and then in brackets, 24y squared divided by 8y would be 3y, and then 16y divided by 8y would be 2. So factorize the first two terms, and then plus, and then our 3y and our 2 on the end, they only have 1 as a common factor, so let's do 1, and then in brackets 3y plus 2, and then close brackets. And as you can see, we've got the same bracket twice. That's fantastic. So we've got 8y lots of 3y plus 2 and another lot of 3y plus 2. So altogether that'd be 8y plus 1 lot of 3y plus 2. And that's it. We've factorized it as well. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 37. So question number 37, we've been asked to factorize 6w squared, subtract 7w, subtract 10. Okay, so let's use inspection to begin with. So bracket, 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 bracket. Okay, we've got 6w squared, so we could either have a 6w and a w, or a 3w and a 2w. Now the two numbers at the end will multiply together to be minus 10. So I'm thinking that could be perhaps 2 and minus 5, or minus 2 and 5, or minus 1 and 10, or 1 and minus 10. So they're the options for the numbers in the brackets. Okay, so let's consider what's going to go at the front of the brackets to begin with. So let's try a 6w and a w. Now when we expand our brackets, we want to get minus 7w. So I think if it's minus 7, let's put a minus 2 there, because that would give us minus 12, and then a plus 5 there. Actually, we've got it there in the first attempt. Let's try that. 6w times w would be 6w squared. 6w times minus 2 would be minus 12w. Plus 5w would be minus 7w, and then 5 times minus 2 would be minus 10. So that's it. So our answer is 6w plus 5, and then in brackets w subtract 2, and that's it. So sometimes whenever you're factorizing things like this, the ones that are a wee bit trickier, you might find that you get lucky, like I did on that one, and get it first time. Sometimes some of my students like to use pencil whenever they're factorizing things like this, so they can try things in different places until they get the right answer, and that would make sense as well. Okay, let's now have a look at our split in the middle technique. Okay, so if we're using the split in the middle technique, we're going to take our a and our c and times them together. So 6 times minus 10 is minus 60. So we want to find two numbers that times together to be minus 60 and add together to be minus 7. So I'm thinking that's going to be minus 12 and 5, because minus 12 times 5 would be equal to minus 60, and minus 12 plus 5 would be equal to minus 7. So that would work. So we're going to split this middle term up, our minus 7w, into a minus 12w and a 5w. So let's do that. So we'll put our 6w squared. Now in terms of the order, I like to put the negative 1 here and the positive 1 there. So minus 12w, and then plus 5w, and then our minus 10 on the end. Okay, so we've split the middle term up. Now let's factorize. So 6w squared minus 12w, we can take 6w out of both of those, so 6w, and then in brackets, 6w squared divided by 6w would be w, and then minus 12w divided by 6w would be minus 2, and then close brackets. And then plus, and we can divide both of these by 5, so 5, and then in brackets, and we would have w subtract 2. And that's fantastic with the same bracket twice. We'll get 6w lots of w subtract 2 and 5 lots of w subtract 2. So altogether that'll be 6w plus 5 lots of w subtract 2. And that's it. So 6w plus 5, and then in brackets w minus 2. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 38. So question number 38 says a quadratic expression 5x squared plus ax plus 9 can be factorized. So it can be factorized, and a is an integer, so this is an integer. How many possible values are there for a? Okay, so let's consider this. So if we've got 5x squared, we know at the front of both brackets would have to be 5x, and an x. That's our options for the front of the brackets. We'd have to have a 5x and an x, because if it's 5x squared, when we expand our brackets, that's the only possible option there. Okay, so now if we have a look at the number on the end is a 9. That means the numbers in the brackets here and here will have to times together to be 9. And we're told a is an integer. It doesn't specify if it's a positive or a negative integer. So unlike we had a similar question earlier on when it said a was a positive integer, so that meant that we knew that it would have to be a plus sign and a plus sign. But here, we don't actually know it could be, because we're looking for numbers that times together to be 9, so it could be 9 and 1, or 3 and 3. Or remember here, the order is important, because it could be also a 1 and a 9. So it could be those options, but because we don't know if this is a positive or a negative, it could be negative numbers that times together to be 9 as well. So it could be minus 9 and minus 1. It could be minus 3 and minus 3. Or it could be minus 1 and minus 9. So let's put those in the brackets and see if we put those in the brackets what we would get for the value for a. So if we had plus 9 and plus 1, what would a be equal to? So here we would have 5x times x, that's 5x squared. 5x times 1 is 5x. Plus 9x. So 5x plus 9x would be 14x. So a would be equal to 14 there. Okay, if we had 5x plus 3 and x plus 3, let's see what we get if we expand our brackets. 5x times x is obviously 5x squared again. 5x times 3 is 15x, plus another 3x would be 18x. So a would be equal to 18 there. If we had 5x plus 1 and x plus 9, if we expand our brackets, let's see what we get. Again, we get the 5x squared. 5x times 9 is 45x, plus another x would be 46x, so a is equal to 46. Okay, now we would have 5x minus 9 and x minus 1. And if we had these, if we expand those middle terms, we'd have 5x times minus 1, that's minus 5x. Minus another 9x would be minus 14x, so a is equal to minus 14. And one on here we would just get minus 18 and minus 46. Let's just check and see. So here if we have 5x minus 3 and x minus 3, 5x times minus 3 would be minus 15x. Minus another 3x would be, indeed, minus 18. That would be equal to minus 18. And finally, if we had a 5x minus 1 and an x minus 9, if we expanded our brackets, our middle terms, 5x times minus 9 would be minus 45x, minus another x, a would be equal to minus 46. So altogether, the question says how many different possible values are there for a? So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 possible values for a, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 39. So question number 39, we've been asked to factorize 10x squared plus 119x subtract 75. And this is a calculator question, so that might help a little bit in terms of finding out what numbers multiply together to be 75. And also whenever we expand our brackets, how to get that 119 in front of the x. Okay, and in terms of what goes at the front of the brackets, we've got 10x squared. So we could either have a 10x and an x, or a 5x and a 2x. I'm going to try 5x and a 2x to begin with. If it's not right, we can swap it later on. And then in terms of the number on the end here, we've got minus 75. So we're looking for numbers that multiply together to be minus 75, such as minus 1 and 75, or 1 and minus 75, or 3 and minus 25, or minus 3 and 25, 5 and minus 15, or minus 5 and 15, and so on. Now we want to see if one of these options will work, so that whenever we put them in these brackets, if we can expand the brackets and get the 119x that we want. And if we can, then perhaps we can try 10x and x. Okay, so we want to get 119x. So to get 119, well, I'm not going to put the 75 over here because 5x times 75 is going to be way too big. Okay, let's then try the 25. So if we would have put the 25 there, we could have 5x times 25, and 5 times 25, it's a calculator question, so you can try that out, is 125. And that's actually quite close. So I'm going to make that a plus so we get the 125. And then that means that we'd have minus 3 here. And that might work. Let's just see. 5x times 2x is 10x squared. 5x times 25 is 125x. And then minus 6x, because 2x times minus 3 would be minus 6x. Well, 125 take away 6 is 119. So that would work, actually. So that's it. We've got it. So the answer would be 5x minus 3, and then in brackets 2x plus 25. And that's it. Okay, so that was using inspection. Now let's have a look at using the split in the middle technique. So let's get rid of that. Okay, so if we were using split in the middle technique for this question, we would times together the A and the C. So we're going to do 10 times minus 75, and that would be equal to minus 750. So we want to find two numbers that whenever we times them together, we'll get minus 750, and when we add them together, we'll get 119. Okay, so this is a calculator question, so that might help. So let's consider some numbers that times together to be minus 750 to begin with. So we would have minus 750 and 1, and they would times together to be minus 750, but they're definitely not going to add together to be 119, so they're not going to work. Okay, let's go for numbers that are a bit closer together than minus 750 and 1. So let's then try, well, it's even, so 750 divided by 2 is 375 and minus 2. Well, those would times together to be minus 750, but again, they're not going to add together to be 119. So then let's try something else. So we've divided 750 by 1, 2, let's try 3. So minus 3, and minus 750 divided by minus 3 would be equal to 250. So 250 and minus 3, the times together to be the minus 750 that we want, but they don't add together to be 119. Okay, so now let's try something else. So in terms of the factors of 750, well, we've tried 1, 2, 3, 4 is not going to work. Let's try 5. So let's try minus 5. And minus 750 divided by minus 5 would be 150. Again, the times together to be minus 750, but they don't add together to be 119. So we're going to need to try something else. Okay, so we've tried 1, 2, 3, 4, which isn't a factor of 5. Let's try 6. Let's try minus 6. Minus 750 divided by minus 6 is 125. Oh, actually this works, because minus 6 times 125 is minus 150, and whenever you do minus 6 plus 125, you get 119. So that means we're going to split this middle term up, this 119x, into a 125x and a minus 6x. So let's do that. We'd have 10x squared. In terms of the order, I like to put the negative one first and then the positive one second. It just helps us a bit with the factorization. So I'm going to go for minus 6x there, and then I'm going to do plus 125x, and then we've got our minus 75. Okay, so we've split the middle term up into minus 6x and 125x. Now let's factorize the first two terms and the second two terms. So in terms of the first two terms, we can divide both of these by 2x. So let's do 2x. And then in brackets, we'd have, if we divide both of them by 2, we'd get 10x squared divided by 2x would be 5x. And then we'd have minus, and then 6x divided by 2x would be 3. So we've factorized the first two terms, and now let's do the next two terms. We've now got 125x and minus 75. They're both divisible by 25, so let's have plus 25, and then in brackets, and if we divide them both by 25, we'll get 5x minus 3. And that's fantastic, we've got the same bracket twice. So we've got 2x lots of 5x minus 3, and 25 lots of 5x minus 3, so altogether that'll be 2x plus 25 lots of 5x minus 3. And that's it. So we've looked at how to factorize that using inspection and also using the split in the middle technique. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 40. Okay, so let's have a look at our next question, question number 40. So question number 40, we've been asked to factorize 3x squared plus 4xy plus y squared. So this one's a bit different than the ones we've looked at so far, because this time we've got x squared and we've got y squared. So in terms of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down pairs of brackets, so bracket, 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 and we've got 3x squared. Now we know when we expand two brackets like this, so we're going to get the first term here times this term would give us this term here. So let's go for 3x and x, because 3x times x would be 3x squared. Okay, now if we had this and we were expanding this, we would have 3x times x, which is 3x squared, fantastic. We would then do 3x times this term, and then x times this term, and then if we add them together, it would give us this. And then finally, we've got our y squared. So let's try plus y and plus y, because y times y is y squared. And let's just see if this would actually work. If we had 3x times x, that's 3x squared. 3x times y would be 3xy. Plus another xy would be 4xy, and then y times y is y squared. So that's it, we've factorized it. So the answer would be 3x plus y, and then in brackets x plus y. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 41. Okay, question number 41, we've been asked to factorize this time 7x squared plus 20xy minus 3y squared. Okay, so again, let's do our brackets, bracket, 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 bracket. We've got 7x squared at the front, so let's try 7x and an x. Okay, and then this time at the end we've got minus 3y squared. So let's think what would multiply together to be our minus 3y squared. So we could have y and minus 3y, or we could have minus y and 3y, or we could have 3y and minus y, or we could have minus 3y and y. And that's what we could put in the brackets here. And we need to consider which of these options, if we put them in the brackets and we were to expand them, would we get our 20xy in the middle. Now we want 20xy. I'm thinking if we put plus 3y here, 7x times x is 7x squared. 7x times 3y would be 21xy. Now that's quite good because it's close to the 20xy that we want. So if we had 3y, then we'd have to put a minus y there. And let's just check that. 7x times x is 7x squared. 7x times 3y would be 21xy. Minus xy would be 20xy, that's what we wanted there. And then minus y times 3y would be minus 3y squared. And that's it, so we've factorized it. So 7x minus y, and then x plus 3y. And that's it. So whenever you're factorizing things like this, where we've got our x squareds and y squareds, they're very similar to how you'd factorize quadratics. And just make sure that whenever you think you've got it, that you would expand it and get what you want. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 42. Now question number 42 is we've been asked to factorize fully x plus 4 in brackets squared plus 3 and then in brackets x plus 4. Now after making this question, I've actually made another video on Corbettmaths. It's called Factorising Brackets, and it's about taking brackets out of expressions whenever you're factorising. And I've also made a set of practice questions for those as well, so they might be quite useful for you as well. Okay, now if I wanted to factorise something like this, there's a couple of approaches that I could use. One approach would be is actually make this look like something that's a bit easier to factorise. So rather than having an x plus 4 in brackets and then another x plus 4 in brackets, I could say let y equals x plus 4. So I can let whatever's in the bracket be equal to y. So instead of having x plus 4 squared, we could then just call that y and say it's y squared. And then plus, and then 3, and then times x plus 4 would be 3y, just replacing the bracket with a y. And then if we factorize this, which we can factorize that quite nicely, we can just take a y out, we'd have y, and then if we take y out, we'd be left with y plus 3. And then close brackets, just taking the y out. Okay, so we've now got to this stage, and now what we could do is we could replace our y with our x plus 4. So we could just replace y with x plus 4. So instead of having a y here, we could write x plus 4, and I'm just going to put it in a bracket. And then here we had y plus 3, but y is x plus 4. We're replacing the y of x plus 4, but we've still got our plus 3. And then close brackets. Now here we're almost done. Here we've got our x plus 4 in our first bracket, that's straightforward. And then our second bracket we've got x and then 4 plus 3. So let's do 4 plus 3, which is 7. So it'll be x plus 7. And that's it, we've factorized it. We've got x plus 4 and then in brackets x plus 7. And that's it. So if we wanted to factorize something like this, one approach would be to let what's in the bracket be equal to y, factorize that, and then replace that y with what it was, which was x plus 4. And then whenever we put x plus 4 in for y, we just put it there in a bracket, and then we replace the y here with x plus 4, and then just add 3, and then we've got that. So that's one approach. Another approach is just take the bracket out. So here we've got x plus 4 squared plus 3, and then in brackets x plus 4. So we could actually just take the bracket out. So we could say we can divide both of these by x plus 4. So let's take x plus 4 out. And then if we divide both of these by x plus 4, now I'm just going to put square brackets here. And then if I divide this by x plus 4, well, we've got x plus 4 times itself. So if we divide it by x plus 4, we'll be left with an x plus 4. So I'm just going to put that in a bracket, x plus 4. And then here we'd have plus. And then we had 3 and then in brackets x plus 4. We're taking the bracket out, so we'd just be left with 3. And then close our brackets. I'm just going to put a square bracket there. Okay, so here we've got x plus 4. That's the first bracket there. And then here, let's simplify this. We've got x plus 4 and then plus 3. So that would be x plus 7. And that's it. So our answer would be x plus 4 and then x plus 7. And that's it. So that's it. We've factorized it. Okay, let's look at our last question, question number 43. So question number 43, part A, says factorize 10x squared plus 9x plus 2. So if we were to factorize this, I'd put our brackets down, bracket, 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 bracket. Okay, and then if we have a look at this, we've got 10x squared. So we could have a 10x and an x, or a 5x and a 2x. I'm going to try 5x and 2x, 5x and 2x. The reason I chose those were because we want to, when we expand our brackets, to get 9x here in the middle. I didn't actually want to use the 10, because if you do 10 times something, it's probably going to give you something that's bigger than 9 there in the middle. So that's why I went for a 5x and a 2x. Now in terms of the numbers on the end, they're going to multiply together to be 2. So I'm thinking if we put the 1 there, it's not going to get too big, and then a 2 there. and then let's just check and see if that would work. 5x times 2x is 10x squared, fantastic. 5x times 1 is 5x, plus 4x would be 9x, great, and then 2 times 1 is 2. So that would be 5x plus 2, and then in brackets 2x plus 1. So we've factorised that, we've done part A, and then part B says, hence factorise 10, and then in brackets y minus 3, close bracket squared, plus 9, and then in brackets y minus 3, close brackets, plus 2. Now if we have a look at what we were given to begin with, we had 10, I'm just going to write above it, 10x squared plus 9x plus 2. So it looks very similar to what we've been given, and that's why it says hence in this question, because we're going to use this to help us. And if you notice here, instead of being 10x squared, we've got 10 and then this bracket squared. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace our x with what the bracket is. We're going to say that x equals y minus 3. So they've changed the x to be y minus 3. They've changed the x to be y minus 3. So if we want to factorize this, we can just replace this x here and here with y minus 3. So let's do that. So we had 5, and then instead of x, we're going to use y minus 3. And I'm just going to put in a bracket y minus 3, but we've still got our plus 2, and then close brackets. And then here, our second one, we've got 2, and then instead of x, we've got y minus 3, and then close brackets, and then plus 1, close brackets. So we've replaced our x's with y minus 3's. And now if we just expand our brackets and simplify, that'll be what goes in the brackets. So let's do that. 5 times y is 5y, and 5 times minus 3 will be minus 15, and we've still got our plus 2, close brackets. And then here, 2 times y is 2y, and 2 times minus 3 will be minus 6, and then we've got our plus 1, close brackets. Okay, now let's simplify this. So we've got 5y, and then minus 15 plus 2 would be minus 13, close brackets. And then here we've got 2y, and we've got minus 6 plus 1, that'll be minus 5. And that's it. So we've factorized it and simplified it, and that's as far as we can go. So that's our answer. And that's it. So in this video, we've gone through the video solutions to the Corbettmaths Practice Questions on Factorising Quadratics. We've gone through some quite straightforward ones to begin with, where we just had x squareds and y squareds and so on. We've looked at some questions which included difference between two squareds. We've also looked at some questions where we've had numbers in front of the x squareds, and we've looked at how to factorise those using inspection, and also the split in the middle technique. And if you need any extra help on those, if you go to Corbettmaths and go to the videos and worksheet section, and you can go to videos numbers 118, 119, 119A, which I've added in, and 120, there'll be useful video tutorials there for you as well. I really hope you found this useful. If you have found this video useful, please like it, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.